Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
අර පිරිමැස්ම ගැන හිතන ඔබට Vim Liquid වෙතින් රුපියල් 100ක ඉතිරියක්.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday the 20th of December 2022. Sinking to the bottom. Food insecurity in Sri Lanka continues to deepen due to the economic crisis, cautions the World Food Programme report. Democratic Solutions. Dallas-led independent group calls for elections to change economic thinking of the incumbent government. Crucial changes. Education system needs to change to prevent another uprising, says Minister Susil Premajayantha.
We have to start system change from education.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. In your top story for tonight, the World Food Programme says that Sri Lanka's economic crisis has deepened the risk of food insecurity. In a report, the WFP said while 36% of households are food insecure, 76% have resorted to food-based coping strategies. It also said that the food insecurity saw an increase of 4% in October compared to the figures seen in September, with 48% of households in the southern province being deemed food insecure. According to the World Food Programme's Household Food Security Survey in October 2022, 35% of households are facing insufficient food consumption, with many consuming far less diverse and nutritious diets, adding that the crisis continues to disproportionately impact different segments of society. The report says that 44% of female-headed households are faring worse than male-headed households, while those in estate areas consistently experience higher levels of acute food insecurity than those in urban and rural areas. It also said that food insecurity saw an increase of 4% in October compared to the figures seen in September, with 48% of households in the southern province being deemed food insecure, followed closely by Sabaragamuwa province, which is 45%. Households in the east and north recorded lowest food insecurity scores in October, with the former having recorded a score of 26% and the latter coming in just a percentage lower at 25%. 6 out of the 9 provinces saw a rise in food insecurity between September and October, namely Uva, Southern, North Central, Central, Northwestern and Eastern provinces, while there was a reduction in food insecurity in the Northern province of 8 percentage points from September. Now, independent parliamentarian Dr. Lanka says that the unemployment rate will increase with the new electricity tariff hike, as it will close down businesses that are barely operating and trying to survive. Dr. Godaheva also said that the economic thinking of the government should change, which is only possible via a new election.
If you look at the way the government is managing its economy, I don't see the government is going to come out of this crisis. Because now they have got into what I call a vicious cycle. Everything they do results in further trouble. Now everything starts with high debt. That is why the government declared bankruptcy. And now in order to handle the situation, the government is increasing taxes. Government is maintaining interest rates high. So what does that mean? When taxes are high, the interest rates are high, businesses start struggling. Businesses can't perform. They cannot sustain. So there's a loss of business that will happen as a result. And with the loss of business, there'll be unemployment. And there'll be further brain drain. More and more people live in the country. That leads to less productivity, less outcome, less exchange of activities, which means less income for the government. Finally, the government earns its income through taxes. Collection of business activities have to be there for the government to tax. When the businesses go down, the government income comes down. Then what does the government do again? Government has to go and start borrowing again, government has to increase taxes again, government has to keep the interest rates high. So you get into the now in the vicious cycle. It continues. This government does not have the guts to try something new. What they have to do is to get the businesses activated, support the businesses. In August, government increased all the electricity tariffs. Now only the people have started feeling the burden of that. When they are going through difficulty with these electricity prices, the government has started making claims that they are going to increase these rates once again in January. They say minimum 70% increase will take place. So what does that mean? The businesses which are barely surviving at this moment will have to close down. They will not be able to continue, and the entire country will continue its misery. Now what do we have to do now? We have to change this economic thinking. 2.9 billion US dollars is not going to solve this country's economic problems, because we have already more than 46 billion US dollars of debts hanging. But even that small amount that they say they are getting is not coming. It's continuously getting delayed. Why? Because this government does not have the acceptance at international level. It's very clear. So therefore, now it is time to go and test the people's will, go for elections like a democratic country, and let people decide whom they want to govern this country. And then the international support will come. Everything will restart.
Now, Minister of Education Dr. Susil Premajayantha says changing the education system by introducing reforms need to be the beginning in changing the entire system of the country, adding that there will be another uprising if the government fails in doing it. Speaking at an event in Colombo today, the Education Minister said that they will replace the examination-centered assessment system of primary sections in schools with continuous evaluation system, and a pilot project on this regard will work off in 290 schools of the 9 provinces.
The General Convocation of the National Institute of Education was held in Colombo this morning under the patronage of Minister of Education Dr. Susil Premajayantha.
We are going to introduce education reforms, then later transformation of education, digitalization of education, and changes in the pedagogy, curriculum, development, that is in the general education, and even the early childhood education. We have to start it from that point, and then higher education in the 17 universities. Then we have to upgrade the courses, introduce new courses in universities. Recently I had over 1.5 hours discussion with deans of the faculties of sciences or 12 universities. I appointed a committee, so they are working on it. And on the other hand, so we want to divert the assessment system from exam center to continuous evaluation. So as a result, when we start the pilot project next year, covering about 208 schools, all 9 provinces, so we don't want to have term test for primary section. We are starting with pilot project and see. So classroom continuous evaluation is very important, but less paperwork. So after the pilot project, the full scale reforms will be introduced by 2024. That is what the average people, especially youths, expecting from policymakers. So we have to start system change from education. If we don't do it, there will be another uprising. It is the responsibility of policymakers, the educationists, and the staff, principals, teachers, and the parents. So we will have awareness program. So we have to spend a lot to reform entire education system. And at the same time, we are going to create a National University for Education to produce pre-service teachers with 4-year degree program. After 2024, all the teachers are recruited with that basic degree from our university.
The police today requested all media institutions to not publish unverified information regarding the murder of prominent businessman Dinesh Shafter, as it would impede with the ongoing investigations.
The Homicide and Organised Crime Investigation Division of the Criminal Investigation Department continues to carry on investigations regarding the murder of Dinesh Shafter. As such, the police issuing a statement today requested all media stations to refrain from reporting on the case using unverified information. The police stated that such a course of action would impede on investigation efforts of the police and give the suspects and the perpetrators of the crime an advantage through the publication of unverified information. With this being the case, the police went on to say that the information that would not compromise investigations would be provided to the media by the police in time.
The Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Nimal Siripala de Silva, instructed officials to expedite the Jaya Container Terminal expansion project at the Colombo port. During a visit to inspect the terminal, he instructed to inform the Chinese company in charge of filling the sea and building the terminal to complete the project on the agreed dates. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva inspected the Sri Lanka Port Authority-owned Jaya Container Terminal at the Colombo port yesterday. During the visit, the minister instructed to expedite the currently halted expansion work at Jaya Container Terminal. He also instructed the ministry's secretary to immediately inform the Chinese company entrusted with the work of filling the sea and building the terminal to complete the project on the agreed dates. Upon completion of the project, Jaya Terminal, which is currently 1,260 meters long, will be 1,380 meters long and will be able to berth two 360-meter long ships at the same time. According to the staff of the Colombo port, around 2 million containers are being handled at the JCT at present, and upon completion of the project, they estimate that an additional 1 million containers can be handled. The development activities of the JCT will cost $32 million and it is funded by the SLPA. According to the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, the Port of Colombo will be a unique port in South Asia in the next 5 years, following the completion of the Eastern Container Terminal and Jaya Container Terminal. And we'll be back with more news after this short commercial break. Stay with us.
It's hard to keep up with the new when you're listening to the same old Slim Brand Week. A week for professionals.
Welcome back. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe instructed the Nuwara District Secretary and Commissioner to provide 30 acres of abandoned land to the Ambewala farm yesterday. While making these comments during an observation tour in the area, the head of state also called on the local authorities to provide the facilities required to develop the land so that cattle could graze. President Ranil Wickremesinghe issued these instructions yesterday during an observation tour of the United Dairies Lanka Private Limited, which belongs to the Ambewala Farm Group. The President commended the systematic growth achieved by the Ambewala Farm in the dairy production industry, adding that it has set an example for other dairy farms as well. The President instructed officials of the Ambewala Farm to open it up for research activities for university students in the country to gain experience in the dairy farming field. The General Manager of the Ambewala Farm Group said that Ambewala Farm is the main centre in Sri Lanka as well as South Asia, which can boast of the highest technical application in dairy production and farming technology. 40,000 litres of liquid milk is also supplied to the market daily. A mechanism is already in place to get the whole maize plant of the Ambewala farm from the farmers after harvesting the crop. Accordingly, the Ambewala farm has facilities to amass around 25,000 metric tons of maize plants annually and store them. Over 150 Sri Lankan migrants, part of 302 migrants who were rescued on the 8th of November near Vietnam, returned to the island yesterday. Now, the migrants were repatriated to the island as part of a coordinated effort taken by the Sri Lankan Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the International Organization for Migration. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka and the International Organization for Migration facilitated the voluntary humanitarian return of 152 Sri Lankan migrants through a chartered flight from Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam yesterday. The passengers were rescued when their boat capsized off the coast of Vietnam on the 8th of November 2022. The Chief of Mission to the IOM of Sri Lanka and Maldives expressed their appreciation to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for facilitating the return process and considers this to be a good example of teamwork involving the governments of Sri Lanka and Vietnam. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in coordination with the Sri Lanka Navy and the Sri Lanka missions in the Philippines, Singapore and Vietnam, together with the Regional Maritime Rescue Coordination Centers based in Singapore, coordinated rescue efforts for the migrants. Since the 8th of November 2022, a total of 302 migrants were accommodated in 3 different Vietnam military accommodation facilities situated in the city of Vung Tau. For over a month, IOM, in coordination with the government of Vietnam and the Sri Lanka Embassy in Hanoi, ensured the provision of basic necessities including food, medical aid, hygiene kits and counselling support for all the migrants. In your business news, the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has decided to cancel the finance business license issued to Swarna Mahal Financial Services PLC effective from today. Accordingly, Swarna Mahal Financial Services will no longer be able and permitted to engage in financial businesses as per the provisions of the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011. The certificate of registration of the entity as a registered finance leasing establishment was also cancelled under the provisions of the Finance Leasing Act No. 56 of 2000 on the instructions of the Director of CBSL's Department of Supervision of Non-Bank Financial Institutions. In view of this contribution made by SMB Finance PLC to repay the remaining deposits of Swarnamahal Financial Services, unclaimed deposit liability of the entity will be transferred to SMBE along with the corresponding assets value and relevant depositor information. Further, Sri Lanka Deposit Insurance and Liquidity Support Scheme will take necessary actions to pay compensation to the outstanding insured deposition of SFSP to the maximum of 1.1 million rupees per depositor as per the regulations of the SLDILSS in due course. Now, the All Share Price Index closed in red as a result of price losses in counters such as Haley's, Sampath Bank and Richard Pearce and Company, with the turnover also crossing rupees 688 million rupees. The ASPI fell by 41.28 points to end the day at 8,441.42 yesterday. The S&P SL20 index meanwhile witnessed a similar behavior as it ended 24.56 points lower to close at 2,631.3. High net worth and institutional investor participation remained subdued for the remainder of the day. Mixed interest meanwhile was observed in Sri Lanka IOC, Expo Lanka Holdings and Softlogic Life Insurance, whilst retail interest was noted in Brown's Investments, SMB Leasing Non-Voting and Softlogic Capital. Foreign participation in the market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers. Now let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies in the world. Now, Sri Lanka Cricket has announced the 20-member squad selected by the selection committee to take part in the upcoming Sri Lanka tour of India. The SLC said that Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs Roshan Ranasinghe has granted approval for the selected squad. The Sri Lankan team will take part in the 3 ODIs and 3 T20Is during the tour that will commence in early January.
The squad captained by Dasun Shanaka will have Kusal Mendis as the vice-captain for one-day internationals and Wanindu Hasaranga as the vice-captain for T20 internationals. Other members of the squad include Pathum Nishanka, Charith Asalanka, Avishka Fernando, Sadira Samaravikrama, Dhananjay De Silva, Ashen Bandara, Mahish Theekshana and Chamika Karunaratne. Dilshan Madhushankar, Kasun Rajitha, Tunit Vellalage, Pramod Madhushan and Lahira Kumara are also included in the squad. Meanwhile, Banako Rajapaksha and Nuwan Tushara, who are also in the squad, will only play the T20 matches, while Jeffrey Van der Sey and Nuwanithu Fernando will only play the one-day internationals. Sri Lankan team will take part in 3 ODIs and 3 T20s during the tour, and the first T20 international between the two teams will be played at the Wankhede Stadium on the 3rd of January.
And that's all the news we have for this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. Until then, tune in to our social media platforms to stay updated on the latest news. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.